So I think one of the takeaways from that experience is just how brave and bold she was. You know, it's very difficult to meet people who escape from prison and live to talk about it and really go somewhere and able to establish another life and be secure. I mean, she did it. I mean, she actually did it, and there are people who did it for her. I mean, she didn't do this by herself. There were people who actually liberated her and got her all the way to Cuba, and she was able to live a life, and she's able to, you know, to have a great life for herself. She's made a life for herself, and the people of Cuba have protected her. I mean, that's an amazing thing. I mean, an amazing thing to think that all this time they have secured her. And don't think America has not tried to get her. I mean, there is a bounty on her head that I'm sure the mercenaries would love to go to Cuba and get her and bring her back and collect that money, but they have not been able to do that because of the love of Cuba for her. And so that is a great takeaway. Go ahead.
And isn't it interesting, too, the timing of when they placed her on the most wanted list and who they used, the state agent who actually gave the press conference, it was brother, actually. And there was certain language that was used during that press conference that was very incendiary. Talking about, she has anti-American, anti-U.S. rhetoric, that she's a domestic terrorist. It's just the timing of that was obviously for political reasons. And but yeah, you're right. She's it's not often that you meet someone who successfully was liberated from prison.
And then also, I think, they also duped the Congressional Black Caucus, because I think there are members of the Congressional Black Caucus that bought into putting her on the FBI's most wanted list, but they used the name Joanne Chesimard. They didn't say Assata Shakur.
Yes,
and so people did not know who's Joanne Chesimard. We don't know who that is. And so people bought into it. Okay, let's put her on, because they didn't know that Joanne Chesimard was used to be Assata Shakur. I mean, Assata Shakur used to be Joanne Chesimard. And so people bought into that because they didn't know. And so they duped people into saying, we need to put this Joanne Chesimard on there, as opposed to saying Assata Shakur needs to be on this most wanted list. And when people found out what they were doing, they're like, hey, we were duped. We didn't know this is who they were talking about. So it's just, it's tricks the colonizer plays.
Absolutely. Well, I don't have any other questions unless you have some final thoughts that you want to share, and then we'll talk a little bit about Assata's legal case, just some of the facts involved in the case, and why she was denied a fair trial.
I just want to, leave with a quote from a poem that she wrote, and she says, it's our duty to fight for our freedom. It's our duty, it's a duty for Black people. Other people don't understand this, that we have a duty to fight for our freedom, because other people were born free. We weren't born free. And people don't understand what it is to have to fight for your freedom like we do. And it's our duty to win. And the poem is, it's our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. And the key fact is that we must love each other and support each other. It doesn't mean that we're going to always agree. It doesn't mean that we're going to always be on the same page. It doesn't mean that we're going to always like what we think and we're going to always do the same thing. But we must love each other and support each other. That is so key to our success, because we have nothing to lose but our chains.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about her Assata Shakur's legal case, some of the facts, and Hakeem is going to go ahead and take it from here.
Yeah, thank you. So one essential element of Assata Shakur's legal case is that they actually put her in an all-male prison. The facility that she was incarcerated in was all male, so they didn't put her in the regular. They put her in the regular women's prison at first, and then they transferred her over to the all women's prison. And the reason they did this is because they said she was a security threat as a member of the Black Liberation Army, and the Black Liberation Army had a history of, prison escapes. Safia Bukhari, also another soldier in the Black Liberation Army, she also escaped from prison. And so Assata Shakur actually raised a legal case concerning her freedom of expression, because she said she was put in an all-male prison specifically because it was an infringement of her legal right to freedom of association. And so in the legal opinion of the judge ruled against Assata Shakur's right to not be in the all-males prison, saying that there was a significant security risk associated from Assata Shakur that warranted her being in the all-male prison. And, it just goes to show you, regardless of whether she was in the all-males prison or not, she still was able to escape as a result of the Black Liberation Army and their efforts of transferring her and getting her out of that prison. And this just brings me to just a larger point about just the history of the Black Liberation Army, because as Nisa said, Assata Shakur, she didn't escape from prison on her own. It was a part of a movement that the Black Liberation Army, which was a legitimate movement against white supremacy, when the U.S. and there's been several attempts to demonize the Black Liberation Army as, they were terrorists. But when you look at it, the United States has invaded Iraq, Afghanistan, under the premise that, these regimes were being oppressive to their people. And when we have a documented history of the U.S. government perpetrating acts of slavery, black codes, Jim Crow, police brutality upon black people for over 300 years, you would have to, only somebody who is literally seeking to reinforce white supremacy would ever think that black people do not have a right to create their own army for their own liberation. And that's what the Black Liberation Army was about. Now, the brother who was charged with capturing or freeing Assata Shakur from prison, these are also names that need to be honored and mentioned. One brother, his name was Sakol Abdullah Adinga, and I'm just going to read a statement from him. And in one of his works called You Can't Jail the Spirit, he says, "My name is Sakol Odingo. I am a Muslim and a prisoner of war. I was born in Queens, New York on June 17, 1944. I was raised in a family of 9, father, mother, 3 brothers, and 3 sisters. I was kicked out of school in the 10th grade for defending myself against an attack by a teacher." And then he goes on to describe his political awakening. He says, "The teachings of Malcolm X, who was then with the Nation of Islam, became a big influence on me at that time. After my release, I became involved in black political activity in New York, especially revolutionary nationalist politics. In 1964, I also became involved in the cultural nationalist movement. By 1965, I began to join the Organization of African American Unity, founded by Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, Malcolm X. I began to move, and among many young African nationalists, my political consciousness was growing daily. I was reading and listening to many African nationalists from Africa and the U.S. and became convinced that only after successful armed struggle would new Africans gain freedom and self-determination. I also became convinced that integration would never solve the problems faced by new Africans," end quote. And after the assassination of Malcolm X, Sakol Dingo, he didn't feel that the Organization for African American Unity was going in the right direction, and the Muslim Mosque Incorporated had disintegrated, and so he ended up joining the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, which later became the Black Liberation Army, which was the underground armed wing of the Black Liberation Army. And he was charged with the escape of Assata Shakur from prison, along with another brother named Abdul Majid, who was unfortunately martyred and assassinated during the course of seeking to get Assata Shakur out of prison. Another legal case, and this is just something that I just came across during a search for Assata Shakur in the legal database. And as it was stated previously, they always refer to Assata Shakur in all of these legal documents by her slave name, Joanna Chesimard, instead of the name that she assigned to herself, Assata Shakur. But in this one court case that took place in February 18th, 1977, Assata Shakur, she actually brought forth a lawsuit based upon freedom of religion, and the judge by the name of Judge Al-Sador, he writes that Joanna Chesimard, the appellate in this court and the defendant in the state criminal proceedings, who observes Juma Friday as her weekly holiday, she asserts her First Amendment right to free exercise of religion as the basis of her request for federal injunctive or declaratory relief prohibiting state officials from conducting proceedings on Friday in her trial. The district court denied this request, acting on the appellant's motion for stay in the district court order and the appellee's petition for summary affirmance. A panel of this court granted appellate declaratory relief on the First Amendment free exercise of religion. Indicted in New Jersey on 2 counts of murder, 1 count of armed robbery, 1 count of illegal possession of a weapon, and 4 counts of assault on 2 police officers, Joanna Chesimard filed numerous pretrial motions in the state court. So in this law court, essentially, Assata Shakur, she did not want her many of her court proceedings to take place on Friday during Juma prayer time, and so she essentially brought forth a lawsuit saying that was an infringement on her freedom of religion and wanted to be able to have free access to the Juma prayer service at the mosque. So this just shows, the continued defiance of Assata Shakur in the face of white supremacy. That she was somebody who gave her life, who was willing to sacrifice her own life for black people. And it should be very clear that whether Assata Shakur whether she actually did what she's accused of doing, you have to recognize that any act of Assata Shakur as a member of the Black Liberation Army, it was always in the context of self-defense in the face of racist police officers and a racist society, determined to oppress black people. So we hold the position that, whether Assata Shakur is accused of doing, what she's doing, even though she maintains her innocence, we believe she's innocent, we still, regardless, say that I would defend her either way, because we know that any act by the oppressed against the oppressor is an act of self-defense, and Assata Shakur had the right to self-defense. So on that basis, we, honor Assata Shakur. We thank Assata Shakur for her phenomenal work in, pushing, black revolutionary activity forward. We pray that she continues to be protected in Cuba, and we should, always commemorate our warriors and our freedom fighters. Thank you for listening, audience. Thank you, Nisa and Ezinne, for coming on to help facilitate this important discussion. And that concludes our program on Assata Shakur.